Hi there, and welcome to the 11th episode of Career Stories Live. I'm really pleased to have Craig here with me. So hi, Craig. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, Sarah. Delighted to be here and looking forward to sharing my life story with you.
Yeah, can't wait. So I've had so many messages before this session, so I'm expecting a bit of interaction. So you saw there's a couple of comments already through from Jeff and Lois, so thank you for that. So anyone else that's watching, please do feel free to let us know that you're here, where you're joining from, ask us any questions, share your experience, etc. in the comments. So that's cool. Thank you. So Craig and I connected on LinkedIn in May 2021 after Jeff Young told me that I needed to. So that's how we were connected. And we were just chatting a bit about Jeff offline, so I know that he's watching. So as I say most weeks, the basis for these lives is just really to talk a bit about what people do, why they do it. I really like learning about what people do, and the aim is to kind of get advice from people that have been doing different occupations to help new people in their roles. So Craig, the Black Knight, is a B2B specialist for SMBs, and his career is really varied, really interesting. So I've got to ask firstly, because so many people have messaged me, why are you called the Black Knight?
Okay, in case I miss any of it here, then you can find out the whole story on my website. So
we'll put a link to your website also in the chat so people can have a look at that.
Brilliant, thanks. The Black Knight actually evolved because when we were launching the business, we had no idea what to call it, my wife and I. And my nephew is a graphic designer, and I tasked him with coming up with some ideas for me. And he said, well, what is it you're going to be doing? I said, well, I'm going to be advising businesses on business strategy, growth strategy, etc., etc. And anyone that knows chess knows it's the game of strategy. So the next thing I got back from him was several different iterations of chess pieces, all in beautiful backgrounds. And the one that he had of the Black Knight just resonated with me perfectly. And I said, look, can you do something with that and make it a bit different roundabout, which he did. And he designed the logo that everyone now knows.
Nice.
But after a very short few weeks of having that, someone actually in one of my messages referred to me as "So Mr. Black Knight," and I thought, oh, I like that. And so I started to work on it. I created the hashtag, and then I think it was in 21 that I actually added it into my name and my top panel on my LinkedIn profile. But the Black Knight, the importance of the Black Knight is that if you think about the game of chess, it's actually based around a medieval castle, effectively. So the knights are the ramparts, the castle walls. But if they're breached, the very next person in line is the knight. And traditionally in the days of medieval past, then the knight would ride on a huge horse with a great view above everyone else, and he would ride into battle and defend the realm effectively. And that all married in perfectly with my principles and what I want to do with different mindset, which is really just to act on people's behalf, work with them, and to help them become. I quite often talk about success, and I refer to it by saying whatever success means to you, because it's different for different people, and so the Black Knight is there to help people to achieve success, whatever that success might mean to them, and of course he moves differently.
I was just going to say, it's the one that does that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and so
different directions.
Yeah, exactly, and only the pawn and the knight can actually start a game, but every other piece on the board is limited by straight line moves, so they can either move straight ahead, side to side, or diagonally. The knight has lost all these tie downs. He can jump over pieces, and he always ends up on a different square, a different coloured square. So if he starts on a black, the next move he'll end up on a white. So he actually can help to confuse the opponent in the chess game, or in business, as I refer to it, as to your competitors. He can confuse them and help you to stay a step ahead, and that's what it's all about. And I think he defends our our realm very powerfully. I hope that answers it.
That's perfect. That's really cool. So slight tangent. Did you watch the Queen's Gambit?
No, I didn't.
Oh, so good.
And the number of people that asked me, why don't you call one of your services the Queen's Gambit? I said, because it's a, there's a death in it, people die in it. It's not a positive story, so it doesn't fit in with my mantra, Mr. Positive sitting here.
Fair enough. Okay. So moving on to what you're doing now then, can you give us a bit of an overview of what you do in your consultancy, which is called Different Mindset, and actually how did you come up with that name?
I blame my wife for that one. So we spent, oh goodness, countless hours back in, the last quarter of 2019, where I'd resigned from my position as a director for an IT company, an MSP, and I was planning what I was going to do. We knew that I was going to set up the business, but I had no idea what to call it. So we sat and we wrote down, both of us with separate pads, we wrote down all different words, things that were positive. We used the dictionary on our tablets to find words that were positive. And time and time again, the word mindset came up in that research or that conversation. And I really liked it because it's something that's carried on from my employed career, because I often found that the biggest issues with the companies I worked for, was employed by, was that their mindset was just all in the wrong place. And I often used to talk to them about, we just need to get a different mindset on this. And of course, when I said that, my wife just went, that's it. And that's how it came about. So there wasn't any intellect involved in it whatsoever. It was purely just chance and past experience that brought it to the fore.
Best way, definitely. We've got a few comments coming through. So John is saying, love that chess metaphor. Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
And Jeff, makes perfect sense when you remember that both Craig and the Black Knight have the special ability to jump over other pieces on the board. So we're looking for you to jump in later then.
Yeah, I remember the day, Jeff. I remember the day.
Sarah saying hello to wonderful folks. Oh, thanks for joining, Sarah. So I met Sarah at a Christmas party, actually, and we're going to look forward to seeing her in March at Joy Experience Do, so that's going to be cool. And always blame your wife or your husband for anything. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. And Lois, mindset is potentially your number one asset if it's in the right place. So
yeah,
definitely.
Well said.
Thank you. Excellent. Okay, so this isn't to do with your career, I know, but one of the things you told me about was your mum and the Queen's wedding dress. So I reckon people are going to want to hear this story, Craig. So
something I burst with pride every time I think about this, because my mum, when she got closer to retirement, she actually worked for Marconi Space and Defence and taught electronics, so she was quite an intellectual type of individual. And but many years before that, when her and my dad first got married, she worked in factories such as Baby Grow as a sewing machinist. She was a very skilled machinist. But even before that, she worked at a factory in Dunfermline, which was called Winterthurs, which was a silk making factory, and they made silk for the parachutes for the Second World War. So that was the purpose of the factory. And when the designer, whose name escapes me, for the Queen Elizabeth's wedding dress had got his design, he knew the materials, and he knew that there was only one place in the UK that could make high quality material for the dress. So he hired Winterthurs to make what was called a Duchesse satin for the wedding dress. And Winterthurs then took their 5 top machinists, my mum being one of them, and they set them on this project for creating the most perfect satin that anyone had ever seen. And so that was great. I only found this story out 2 or 3 years ago, incidentally. Now, my brother, who we lost last year, sadly, but my brother was a senior civil servant in Scotland. He was, at that time, I think he was the head of the Scottish Office Audit Department. and he got 2 tickets to go to the Queen's garden party at Holyrood Palace in Edinburgh. And so he decided to take my mum because she was a big royalist. And so they went away across. They're standing in the garden at Holyrood, and then the assistants come down and they organise the crowd into 2 parallel lines. And down one line, the Queen goes and greets everyone and shakes hands. And down the other line, the line that my mum's in, was Prince Philip. So as Prince Philip's going down, shaking the hands with everyone, excuse me, he takes my mum by the hand, and as he's about to walk away, she grabs his hand with her other hand, and she says, "You know, I was one of 5 ladies that made the material for your wife's wedding dress." And he kind of thought, well, and then he asked her,
"Oh, so sorry, I don't know if you carried on there, but my Mac just switched off."
All right. Did you hear it? Do you want to rewind that?
That's fine. So we got you carry on, and I'll catch up later. Thank you. I'm hoping everyone else is still there.
Effectively, Prince Philip shook my mum's hand and welcomed her to the garden party, and she took the opportunity to say, "By the way, I was one of 5 women that was actually seconded to make the material for your wife's wedding dress." And my brother knew this, and he was standing beside her, and he thought, you could see Philip didn't believe a word of it at first. And he said, "Oh, right, and what was that material called?" And she said, "Oh, it was Duchesse satin, and it was in a particular colour of pearl." And he said, "That's exactly right." And he stood with Mum for about 5 or 10 minutes, talking to her about the intricacies of that material and how it shone and so on. And of course, my mum never stopped thinking about it and talking about it for years after. So it was, my brother and I were very, very proud of Mum at that time. We always were, but that was a particularly proud story.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm sorry I disappeared. My Mac just switched off. So bizarre.
Okay.
But I'm glad to hear that it carried on. So Paul's just told me that Craig's stories carried on, and Jeff said it carried on as well. And then we've got Susan saying good afternoon. So thank you very much to everyone that's joining. So that was the wedding dress story. Now let's get on to your career. So how did you start your career?
You're going to go one back here, but before most of the people in this were born. I left school as a 16-year-old and to start an apprenticeship. And many of you might know the textile factory Leyland Scott, who make t-shirts and undergarments and golf jerseys and whatnot. And I started my apprenticeship with them many, many years ago, back in the 70s, mid-70s. And it was there that I got my introduction into all different types of engineering, and where I was trained how to fix things that were broken. And it's a passion that I continue to this day. I love getting things and taking them apart and trying to make them work or work better in some cases. So that was me. I started my apprenticeship, met my wife there, and there's a lot of people that I met at that time who are still friends to this day. They kind of treated me like the wee brother, everyone looked after me, and I was included in everything. So it was fantastic for me. And but I'd always, since I was a schoolboy, wanted to become a policeman. And in, I think it was December 1978, I joined Fife Police Force at the time. It's all Police Scotland now, but at that time it was Fife Constabulary. And I achieved a childhood ambition, effectively. I didn't last very long, I have to confess, because I had a real bad run of experiences. And I left after 3 years. And the main reason I left was because on my first shift back after a 2-day break, me and a colleague were called across the radio to attend a house where there had been a cot death. And So we had to go and investigate this. There's a lot of procedures that you had to go through at the time. And effectively, we had to take this little baby, Stephen, away from his mum and dad in his carry cot. What made it particularly difficult was that Stephen was 9 months old, and only 9 months before, Stephen's dad and I had been standing in the maternity hospital, both our children born the same day, and we'd been hugging each other. And 9 months later, here I am coming to take his baby away from him. So,
wow, Craig.
So it was a nightmare, and it's. I talked about it a couple of years back with Eric Doyle, whom you know from the Burrito, and that was the first of me ever talking about it. Even my wife and family didn't know about it until that day, and since then I'm comfortable with it. But up until then, I was waking up in tears overnight just because I couldn't get it in my head. So that was my ambitious police career over in one fell swoop.
Yeah, well, totally understandable. I actually had a friend in the police force, and she didn't last for very long either, and it was because she realised that she didn't like the dog. So she was getting called out at night and hated it because she was scared of the dog. So she left really quickly.
Oh, I like the dogs better than some of the policemen, I have to tell you.
So I can see you've got a few comments coming through. So Paul was saying, great story. So that was about the wedding dress. And Susan saying, when you say Craig's story carried on, you mean they never end. I just meant that StreamYard continued without me, which I'm really pleased to know now. So that's good. Good learning.
Thanks, Susan.
Yeah, laughing. So is Craig. Sorry. So everyone's laughing at that. Okay, it's Craig, that's heartbreaking and really good that you've spoken about it. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Okay. Right, so this next one, another story then. So fighting for Scotland, what's this all about?
In the 70s, then every boy's idol was Bruce Lee.
Okay.
And I got bullied a lot at school. It was particularly with a group of 5 of them that used to get me every day, and I wasn't frightened of them on a 1-to-1 basis, but when it was the 5 of them, then I could never contend with it. And then one day, a guy who's a year older than me, who stayed not far from where my mum and dad lived, come and see me, and he said, "Look, I go to the karate. I think you would enjoy it. Why don't you come along on Tuesday?" So I said, "Oh, I'd love that." So I did, and of course, I knew Bruce Lee. I thought within a couple of weeks I'll be as good as him, and so I went along to the karate. My first night there, I stood in 2 different stances, learning how to get cramp in both legs. And about 2 days later, I was in a classroom when that same guy stuck his head around the door and said, "How did you enjoy the karate on Tuesday, Craig?" And I'm not good in crowds. I was quite shy and reserved, and of course I just kind of nodded my head, and from that second on, I never got bullied. Not because I knew things, not because I was an expert in martial arts, but because the word karate but still carried a kind of stigma with it at that time. And so I stuck with karate for quite a few years, and ended up with doing 2 degree level belts, my first dan or shodan and my second dan or nidan, and it was around that time that I used to enjoy the combative side of it, the competitive side, and I got spotted by a guy in Dundee who invited me to come along for some training sessions, and the next thing I know, I was fighting as part of a 5-man squad as part of the Scottish team. So it was interesting. It was good stuff. But I started to get jaded with karate because I felt it became too sportified, and I was really into the martial arts side of it. And that's when I found jiu-jitsu. So I moved into jiu-jitsu, and I studied that for, goodness, about 20 years perhaps, and I actually became a black belt fairly early on with that, but I never ever went for more grades, but I just tutored and helped coach other jiu-jitsu practitioners, and I really enjoyed it. So martial arts has become a big, massive part, still is to this day. In fact, I damaged my arm at the weekend because my nephew has one of these big slam man. It's like a punching bag, but it's shaped like a human. And I was in visiting him, and I saw it in the corner of his room, so I decided to give it a bit of a tanking, and launched into this thing, not realising that it's been a few years since I did it.
And no warm up.
Well, exactly, yeah, and forgot that it actually hits back. So yes, stupidity prevailed on that occasion. But no, I still love everything about martial arts, and I wish I could still do it, but my knees are a bit skew-off these days.
Oh, okay. Well, I can see there's more comments through. Now, I did see a comment before I got kicked out from John Asperian to say that it was great to see us and he's looking forward to seeing us in a couple of weeks. So that's cool. Yeah. Thank you for joining, John. So Susan saying, I'm in a bother, just lightening the mood on such a harrowing story. So yeah, absolutely.
Not at all. Not at all.
Andrew is saying, do you have the yellow tracksuit? So I'm guessing that's a Bruce Lee reference, is it?
Yeah, Game of Death. Game of Death, where he fought against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the basketball player. But yes, yellow tracksuit. But no, I don't have one, Andrew. Thanks.
I was more the 80s Karate Kid trying to do those moves in the playground at school.
Yeah, standing on one leg. And
exactly, and the painting and the waxing and all that. And you're the black belt tonight. Yes, very good. And Jeff saying, nice knowing a business collaborator that can kick my enemy's butt. There you go.
You don't have any enemies, Jeff.
No, definitely can't. Not possible. Okay, so the next point about your nightclub doorman. So this is really interesting as well.
It's interesting insofar as when Jacqueline and I, whom I mentioned I'd met during my apprenticeship, when we eventually got married. In fact, it'll be our 44th wedding anniversary tomorrow.
Wow, congratulations.
So, when we first got married and I came out of the police force, we were skint. We had no cash coming in at all. And through a guy that I trained and competed with, he told me, look, I do the nightclub doors. He said, it's good money, so why don't you come along? And I did. And, Eddie was the toughest man I've ever met in my life, and suited being a nightclub doorman. I was 5'9", weighed about 11 stone, and I was not the most threatening looking doorman you've ever seen. But I worked alongside Eddie for just over 18 years together. We travelled everywhere, UK, Europe, and we just would disappear on a train or a flight and find some place and say we're looking for some work, and 9 times out of 10 we got work. It was great.
Wow, amazing. So finding the opportunities, that sounds really good.
Yeah, and it sounds just like a throwaway comment that working on the doors, but you learn a lot. You learn a lot about watching body language, for instance. You learn a lot about people and how they react to different circumstances. And I think a lot of that has been very influential in helping me do what I've done in years since then. And it helped me retain my stunning good looks as well, obviously.
Excellent. So we've got wax on, wax off from Susan.
Yes.
Lois is saying, like, as we did, Jeff Young, how can you have enemies? And I'm guessing she means, can I set Poppy on them? That's her dog, for anyone that watching. And we've got a question from Susan. Tell us about Shed Quarters debacle, Black Knight. So
how much time have you got for this? Run into several issues with the what Susan calls the Shed Quarters. This is my office that I got built in quick time.
Okay.
And then it's hit snag after snag after snag, including a complaint from one of my neighbours about the height of it. So the council got involved, and
Oh no.
so no, it's been a nightmare. But it's finished now. I'm just waiting on the interior getting decorated now, so it's almost there. So watch this space. I'll definitely be posting about it, Susan. So
Excellent. I look forward to that. Okay, so Jeff saying his enemies are trolls on LinkedIn and Hope Poppy's a troll slayer. So yeah, essentially some breakfast and Paul saying congratulations. Okay, so that was Nightclub Doorman. Then you moved into private healthcare. So how did that move come about?
Private healthcare was a move that came about through, I was out of work because I'd left the police force, and through someone that knew me in the martial arts scene, who worked in healthcare, I got introduced to someone that owned private insurance, or was a manager in a private insurance company, PPP, a bit like Bupa. And so he introduced me to a guy. I had an interview. He wasn't looking for anyone with any sales or business development experience, because at that time they had what was widely regarded as some of the best sales and business development training in the world, and so it was a great move for me, and it's actually where I honed and formed my skill sets that I use today in a different mindset. So it was a great move, and what was great about it was that coming out of the police force, in the healthcare sector, people genuinely cared. You were in a great caring environment, and if they told a client that they were going to do something or they were going to finish something, it got done, and the client was kept up to speed all the way through it. The communication with clients was exceptional, and so it was a great foundation for my training and for my skill sets that I use to this day. So marvelous move. I was there about 12 years, I think.
Wow, excellent. And as Sarah says, such a varied career, and that's exactly why you're on, because it's really good to have people that have made all these big changes, kind of sector and role, and that's how you learn, isn't it? And then IT, you moved into IT from there.
Yes, IT was a new thing at the time, and I had been desperate to get into this computing thing for a few years, and but without anybody that works in IT will tell you, getting into it if you don't have any prior experience in IT is virtually impossible. It's a bit like getting into pharmaceuticals. Unless you've got knowledge, then there's no opportunities there for you. But I got introduced, I got approached by a guy who referred to himself as a headhunter, and I'd never heard the term before, little naive me. So I was imagining this guy with a bone through his nose and a spear and whatnot. But he spoke to me in some detail and gave me a very in-depth interview. And then he put me in touch with a guy who owned a company down in Haddenham, which is down Middle England somewhere. And I got interviewed there, and the guy brought me in, and it was a baptism of fire because it went against everything that I'd ever been trained. The salespeople were, not to put too fine a point on it, disgusting. The way they cajoled clients and the way they treated clients and the way they talked about clients is completely alien to me, coming from the background that I'd been in. And so I continued doing what I'd always done. I built relationships with existing clients in Scotland and the north of England. And we started to get some miraculous results, which actually resulted in one of my bosses writing an email or a memo to ask if they'd invented cloning machines yet.
Excellent.
It was great at the time, but it was just, oh goodness, it was shocking to watch how sales worked in this industry that I'd been desperate to get into. But I continued doing it my way, and slowly but surely, I think I had a fairly major impact on the way selling evolved within sales at that time, and certainly in the IT industry. And we ended up with better client retention and better new client wins as a result of my techniques rather than the old ways.
Yeah.
And so it was a real good move for me, and I've been there ever since. So something must have worked.
Yeah, no, it's really good. A couple of comments coming through. So Nigel saying eats trolls for breakfast, and love listening to your wonderful life stories, Craig. Keep carrying on. It's interesting. So interesting you mentioned pharmaceuticals, actually. And as far as Paul hasn't commented, he moved from financial services to pharmaceuticals. Strange move normally. My mum did an introduction thing because she worked there. But what actually got him the job was when they said to him, "What experience have you got in pharmaceuticals?" He said, "I watch Casualty."
Excellent.
I was like, no, you didn't say that, but actually it got him the job. So
again, honesty straight away. You know,
exactly.
And sometimes that trumps a lot of other cards. You know?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I normally ask people about values. So everyone that I've spoken to so far has kind of talked about their personal values. So do you think your personal values have an impact on the type of organisation or role that you'll take, that kind of thing, or the clients you'll work with?
Absolutely. When we were growing up, my dad was a miner for 30 years. So he was built like the proverbial brick outhouse and just had so much power. He was a coal-faced worker with a pick and a shovel and working in a hole the height of a desk for hours a day, and as I say, for 30 years. So a real powerful, tough guy.
Mm.
And he always brought my brother and I up on two mantras that he always talked about when he'd had a few whiskies. And one of them was, as long as you're fair with people, they can't expect anything else from you. Mm. And my brother and I have carried that on through our lives. And the other one, which I mentioned quite recently on LinkedIn, and someone commented on it, was that he always taught us, especially because he knew I was fighting in competitions. He always warned me about getting complacent, because that's when you get injured. And the words that he used were, never think that you're number one, but never accept being number two.
Wow, okay.
And a real powerful message. And when you take that into the wider aspect of life, then it still means a lot to me today, because don't think you're better than anyone else. But at the same time, they're not any better than you. So make sure that you treat people fairly and on an equal standing. And if you think about it, going back to what we've already talked about, that's how you build the fundamentals of a relationship.
Yeah.
So, and of course, my business's core values, which are on my website as well. But I believe firmly that a business's core values are their CV to the world. They give people who've never dealt with you or never worked with you, an idea of what you might be like to work with. Before they ever contact you. And core values are also where your business culture comes from. If you don't have core values, you might have a culture. A culture might develop, but it will never be the one that the business owners actually desired. It will usually be one that's been developed through the louder people or the bullies or the stronger people within the business. It will certainly not be one that you want. And culture is all about how a business behaves to their colleagues and to their clients and to their suppliers and so on. So yes, the core business values are critical in any business. They create a culture, the right culture, and culture is what I believe what helps to grow businesses, what helps to make businesses more successful.
Yeah, and I think also from anyone that's watching you or reading your post, they'll see that you are actually living those values as well. So it's not just words that you've plucked out of nowhere, is it? It's words that you are genuinely living through your work and your person.
That means more to me than you can possibly know. Thank you very much.
That's fine. So a couple more comments. So Paul saying, look where that comment led. Thanks to Paul Crowley for taking the chance on me 20 years ago. Yeah, very true. And Ross saying they need to be more than lip service with a company. Action speaks louder than words in a grotty brooch. That's excellent. Yeah, exactly. I was just saying. So thank you. So we are running short of time as usual, which I expected. But what is next for you in your work then, Craig? I was going to show your screen, but I'm actually too scared to do anything other than just be here now in case I get kicked out again. So I will put links to your profile and your website.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
You can tell us what you're up to next.
Well, next, I've actually just registered with an organisation called, where are they? SBN, SVN, Scottish Voluntary Network. And I became a volunteer, or a registered volunteer with them. And through a lady, Jenny at Rural Mobility, I've had a meeting with her last week, and I'm looking to become part of her board of trustees. So I'm going to be spending a bit more time focusing on charitable work, and I'm also looking to move and find a paid position, if you like, in a kind of non-executive director role, or
excellent.
I can do more than one of these. So, and continuing with different mindset in the meantime. But I just feel that I'm in a position now where I want to be able to give something back.
Excellent.
And so it's a real passion for me, and I think it's, if you can, it's important that you do.
Yeah, that's really good. And I'll send you a link, actually. So I hosted a couple of sessions about how to get your first non-exec director positions a year or so ago. So I'll send you some links to that because there's some good content in there. Okay, so as I said, we're about out of time now. So thank you again to Craig for coming on. Sorry about the technical issue, but I'm really glad that it continued for everyone else. Thank you for everyone watching. We'll go through and reply to comments later. It's been really great to see all the interaction.
Marvelous.
So for future shows, I'm kind of talking to people that have mainly had really varied careers. But actually next week I'm back with Charlotte Watchorn, who is UK General Manager for Nordic Pharma. So I've said here, amazing career woman. So she has worked her way up from kind of graduate program right the way up to the top in the pharma industry. And she's an old running buddy of mine. So we used to run together a lot, did a couple of marathons together. So I'm really looking forward to chatting to her. And Paul's just said, Craig, thank you so much for sharing your story. So I think that's a great
Paul. Thank you, Paul.
To end, and see you next month. So yes, so thank you. Definitely echo that. So thanks again. It's been brilliant. And I'm going to end the show now. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah. You were very gentle with me. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad. So thank you, and see you all next week, hopefully.
Thanks, everyone, and
bye.
Lots of love.